Hang me, oh hang me, I'll be dead and gone.
Well, in any case, I guess we should just arrive at what we're here to talk about. I'm saying this like I'm the host of the show.
You are the host of the show.
Yeah, but I try to avoid this sort of thing. But I wanted to talk about Inside Llewyn Davis because I just watched it a few weeks ago, and I watched it again last night. Cameron, did you watch it when?
I did. I watched it last night.
Okay. And so this is a film from 2013 did you see this in the theater?
Yeah, I did see it in theaters. It was probably opening weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think same for me. In fact, I bought the CD at the theater, and at the California, they're selling it for whatever reason. And I would say this is like one of my least favorite Coen brothers movies, having seen all of them actually. And I really was not crazy about this movie in 2013 when we were both 16 years old, I guess. And I was trying to cast myself back into like what was your impression when you saw it at the time? Like, do you remember? It is 8 years ago.
I do remember. I pulled up the IMDb listing because it has my original rating. I gave it a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
So it was mostly that it was vapid and pointless. That was my main criticism of it, and it felt. I think watching it again, I guess. To expand on that idea of the vapidness and the pointlessness, for me, it felt like almost degrading as a viewer, because it takes something that's well, and also at this time, I was playing music regularly. I was, sort of in this headspace, which I'm not necessarily anymore, but, it hit close to home in that way. And one of my feelings and takeaways from it was that it felt like it was like anti-inspirational. And so, and that's not, there's not necessarily, it's not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily. But for me, I just, it's a movie that I walked away from with like a little bit of a disgust if that makes sense.
It is anti-inspiration. I mean, this is true. It is not an inspirational film, and it is not trying to be. As I was watching it, I was trying to like cast myself back and like remember because obviously I love the music and I like different elements of the movie, and there's things I like distinctly remember, like how I thought the opening of the film, I love like not the opening where he gets like punched in the face, but the whole thing where they're playing Fare Thee Well and he's like running around this New York City in the subway with the cat.
Yeah.
Basically, when people weren't talking, I was like, oh yeah, I dig this. By the way, also put it in context, this is the Coen brothers coming off of True Grit, which not only I think is a great film and one of their best movies, but is a film that was very like seminal for me in that year where Inception came out and The Social Network, and I was, and also
it's straightforward. I mean, True Grit is maybe their most straightforward movie they've ever done, in terms of narrative and just character wise. It feels like a correct genre piece, like in all of this.
No, it's a very like not conventional, but it is like a straightforward Western.
Yeah.
And that's not I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, because it's a great film. I just watched it again recently as well. So going into this, also that, you have the trailers, and of course the trailers sort of capitalize on the humor in Llewyn Davis, and that, like, John Goodman, being funny in the back of the car or whatever, and like little bits and stuff. And of course it's all set to that music, and you're like, oh, this is going to be just a rollicking time. And then I feel like I remember like the moment, it probably was like where he has the scene with Carey Mulligan in the park, and she's just like cursing at him and being so nasty, and he's being really nasty. And I was like, oh God, this is really like unpleasant. And I think at a certain point, and then it like became like this like weird, like the stuff with Goodman, it's like so like elongated, and it just was whatever I was expecting, which I don't even know what I really was expecting, but it was not what I got. and I was kind of just left like, what is the point of this movie? Like, what is this film? And it also, I think it probably suffered from coming out in a year where there were a number of films that kind of larded on tormenting their protagonists in a way that's very over the top. Right. I mean, Captain Phillips is an acceptable example because that really happened. But Gravity, I just remember that movie being like everything goes wrong and it was so ridiculous. And like Woody Allen's movie Blue Jasmine was another one where character just suffers every kind of torment. You're like, oh my god. And then Llewyn Davis comes out, and then yet again it's this character who, I mean, is like gets put through the ringer. And so I think maybe I didn't enjoy it for that reason. But having said that, when I watched it again, I think this is one of their best movies. Like I have done, it was probably one of the most satisfying 180s. I mean, not 180 because I didn't hate the film. I just thought it was like, But it is like one of the most significant reassessments I've had in a while. And frankly, even makes me wonder how many movies from the last 10 years, I maybe need to go back and look at again, because it's just like, well, tell me what you felt yourself watching it again without
it. I think it was a little bit more mixed. I didn't come away quite with the same element of like disgust as I think disgust. probably because, well, that is what I felt like when I first watched it.
No, I understand that. Yeah.
There was like a visceral like, ugh, like there it was like that.
And him too. Like that's one of the key things.
Yeah.
There are other Coen brothers movies that are depressing and nihilistic, but at least in those, it's like the character, you're like, oh, you feel bad for them. But this is like a self-sabotaging guy, Yes.
And he's one that you are like, you're so opposed to at every turn. And that's I guess that's one of my reasons why I'm still mixed on it. Is that I feel like it's really difficult for me to be pulled in other than by, like you said, with the scenes that people aren't talking, anytime there's any character on scene, you feel this like this sense of, it's almost like it feels mocking, and kind of like there's a little bit of, like disdain for every character, and it does still, for me, it still leaves you with that like really vapid and hopeless feeling, and again, I mean that's not necessarily bad. I think there's definitely value in that, but even I remember the first time watching it being like, oh, I really love John Goodman's part in it. And watching it again, I was like, I found him to be really annoying and a little bit disgusting. Like,
oh yeah,
like I don't know. So like every character, even like Carey Mulligan, is terrible, like a terrible person. She's so unsympathetic. Probably Justin Timberlake is like the only person who's like, he's on screen for like 5 minutes, but you're like,
Timberlake is like, he's like trying to do right. And well, no, it's Timberlake, it's the military guy, and it's the Garfiennes or the Gorfiennes. They are like really like, wow, just an oasis in a sea of just like a desert of horrible people.
Yes. Although, I kind of sympathize with the main character, with Llewyn Davis when he yells at her. Like it was a little bit cathartic because she's pretty annoying.
Well, they're like those like kind of very like annoyingly sincere people. But
yes.
But when they invite him in at the end, you're like, wow, that's the pretty good-hearted people given how he treated them.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know.
No, and that scene is really awkward too. I mean, the whole dinner scene, I think it's really well done. But that sequence is extremely uncomfortable through the whole time. As soon as he walks in the door and the three guests are like staring him down, kind of like judging him. You know, you already feel there's like tension there.
Yeah, and his judgment of them, like when they bring up the last name of the they have a hyphenated last name for their kid, Green Fun.
Yeah.
He's like, is that a joke? And they're like he the whole movie, he's just has no ability to like censor himself and no ability to like put on just any like layer of civility that will, do any of the things that people do to, prevent themselves from self-sabotaging themselves.
Yes.
And so it is a very frustrating, on top of just like, he's just an asshole and he's like an unpleasant guy. It's very frustrating to watch a guy who's just that kind of, I don't know, like has no control of himself and is just so
exactly
has no desire to, I don't know, to improve himself. It's very like, I can see why it's frustrating for sure. Yeah.
And at the same point, he's someone who you're kind of, you're almost like, for me, I felt like turned away from him in the way that like, there's some people where you interact with and you get the sense that they're doing exactly everything wrong, and don't want to take this sort of hint that the universe is giving. Like they're doing everything in the opposite way that you should. And then they're being like, oh, well, why are things not going well for me? Or why is my life so hopeless? And you're like, well, I don't know. Fuck you. Like there's some manageable things that you can do to improve your life, and you're refusing to do it. And it's not like the character. This is my, I guess this is just me well, it's a character flaw of mine or whatever, but I feel unsympathetic to people who don't want to help themselves, and so for me, that is something that gets like clicked in my brain when I watch this movie is like, oh, I just don't care about this character. Like I don't care if he succeeds. I don't want him to succeed. I'm actually actively rooting against him because he's a shitty person and he can't fix himself. And I don't care. I'm not bought in.
All of those things are true. I mean, I understand that. And I don't know if I'm watching the movie sympathetic. I think I am sympathetic, but because I don't know, maybe I just have more of a tolerance, because a lot of times people watch a movie and go, oh, that was so unpleasant, how could you like that person? I'm like, well, I didn't like them, like I wouldn't want to hang out with this person, and I certainly would not want to hang out with Oscar Isaac in this movie. But I don't know, I think the movie somehow like finds the right like balance in I don't know, it's, I guess maybe just making me empathize with him and his seeing what he's doing to himself. And I like just how harsh it is about how complicit he is in his struggles, but also the contradiction of like, he actually is a really great musician. And just the power of these contradictions of how beautiful these moments when people are singing, when he's singing to someone else, how they exist in this like hideous world. And then as soon as it's over, there's just this like cold bucket of water of, F. Murray Abraham saying like, I don't see a lot of money in this, or his father shitting himself, or, him blowing up at the Mrs. Gorfine. To me, that's where the power of the movie sort of resides, in that like these conflicting forces in the world, and the sort of tragedy of someone with such talent, sort of forgotten to history because they couldn't. I mean, because it's just like history is littered with people like that. There's people, and sometimes people who are like somewhat well known. And definitely, the world of comedy is like this. This movie definitely, the character reminded me of a lot of like famous comedians who kind of like were at the brink of success, but like just were not able to, a combination of a difficult personality and also like a just a genuine the fact that their art doesn't quite fit with what's popular and what's sort of nice, like his, I mean, it is kind of hilarious that he picks that like the most depressing song ever, the death of Queen Jane to sing for his audition, and like expects that this guy will actually hire him, but and then isn't he like listening to some song about ducks or something when he's on the next scene he's in a car and it's just some like these like 50s doo-wop or something that's like just empty and pleasant, and his expression is like Old MacDonald, or I feel like it's something about Old MacDonald.
I think you're
and
right.
He's just sitting there at this dead expression on his face. I don't know. See, it's just like touches like that and things like that elevate the movie. And I think it's also a case of a film where my reassessment is a product of my just like change as a person over the last 8 years too, where I think probably I would have been more in the mindset of like, I don't know, idealism. Like I feel like just rewatching all these Coen brothers movies this year, after I don't know how many years since I last watched them, they really were far more resonant to me than in the past. And maybe I'm becoming just like one of these, like, I don't know what you call them, a doomer, or one of the, I like just this having this sort of gloomy outlook, I guess. But my reaction to seeing like people so unpleasant and people mistreating each other in this way is just so, I think, so different than it would have been 8 years ago. And the way that I don't know, just like my understanding of the world too, of just like, I think when you're in high school and things seem ahead of you, there's like a sense of like that things make sense and you do this, you go out, you can get it, all this. And then it's like, you're in your 20s and you're like, oh no. And also like, given just like the events of the last year, you're just like, oh no, the world doesn't make sense. And the world is much more like the world that the Coen brothers posit. Even in something conventional like True Grit, where, the movie feels like you're getting the satisfying revenge, and then that's followed by literally falling in the snake pit, or it's like things don't come out clean the way you're expecting, and obviously that's the case in No Country for Old Men as well. And there's something also just very interesting about doing it on such a small level with Llewyn Davis, where it's like it's not this huge mythic thing or a big action movie or anything. It's just about like these people who are just sort of forgotten to history, for whatever reason. And I don't know. I just find it very haunting. I feel like I've talked for really long. I apologize, but
no. Yeah, I don't know, because in some ways, I find their outlook a little bit impossible to take sincerely, especially because of their own success and their own in fact the 15 years prior to this, they have sort of blown up in a way that very few filmmakers actually do. And so I find their outlook on life, and especially in this movie where it's about sort of the tragedy of being unsuccessful, or the tragedy of sort of being overlooked. I find it very like sneering in a lot of ways.
I don't know but how so? I mean, like they're sneering at You mean like in an elitist sense?
Because they're Bob Dylan.
Right. But I don't think, but to me, like the movie, I don't know, because like they do have an arch sensibility and they find everything funny. Like everything is slightly ironic to them. There's no doubt. But to me, I feel like they're very sympathetic at the same time towards Llewyn Davis and towards those sort of people, because I'm sure they know people like that, you know, when you go to film school or whatever, where you're just like, oh, there's these talented people. Every line of work, there's talented people who just don't really make it. And I don't know. To me, it's like a very heartfelt movie, even though it's so like its worldview is so acidic and this guy is so unpleasant. You're still. It's just a weird just contradiction, because you're so it's so hateful. It's such a hateful vision, but it's really like I don't know, like open-hearted, like all the stuff about like him and the cat and just like the sense of loss and or him like driving past Akron where his child is, you know, and just like driving past and all these moments that actually like have a genuine emotion to them that is not doesn't feel like they're looking down. It's just more like almost just sort of from like the distance of someone like Eastwood or someone like a director who doesn't want to push. Well, Eastwood can be kind of sentimental, I guess, but you know, but they're very like restrained and like they don't ever want to push for like the Spielberg like push in and the audience cries or whatever, but it's like just enough that you still feel it. Like I don't know, I feel like devastated when he looks at the cat and he just closes the door, or when he goes to visit his father, or when he's when he plays for F. Murray Abraham, and just gets totally rejected. Even though he's a piece of shit, you still are like, oh God, that really sucks. Even just him walking through the fucking snow and then his foot on the diner and his like ice cold feet. You're like, oh God. It's also just a very tactile movie in terms of like, you're just like, oh God, you just feel the cold and just the misery of the
smoke and the atmosphere. Yeah. Well, that's the one thing that I was going to point out, actually, other than it just being, I feel a sort of direct sense of disgust when it comes to the character. But for me, what draws me in about the movie and what I can appreciate better about it now is there's something aesthetically, there's something that it evokes that is unlike any movie that I've ever seen. It's a very, like you said, tactile, but it has this it almost has this like it's like being wrapped in the blanket of that time period. Mm-hmm. It feels like you're it doesn't feel like a period piece where there's that little, there's those bits of distance, or there's those, like every period piece has this like this. It's like you're looking through a lens, or you're looking through the past, time period.
And often has kind of a glow of like, look, we're recreating the past. Yes, isn't it cool? Yes. And this is just, it is like, it's not a nightmare like David Lynch. It's like a mundane nightmare. And it's a very like haunting movie. Like it feels, I don't know how to explain why it feels like it's like pulled out of one of my dreams or something. For some reason, I'm always having dreams, not always, but I've frequently had dreams of going into like these old, desolate, like 50s convenience stores that are very, how like old convenience stores have these like pastel labels. I don't know why I've had dreams about this, like tin cans that are one color going all the way down, and there's like, 6 different items you can buy, and there's so many like locations like that diner where they're
On top of the freeway.
Yeah. With Goodman and things like that just are like just on the edge of feeling kind of like dreamlike and surreal. And then of course it's shot in this way that's very hazy and kind of I'm fascinated by the way this movie looks too.
Yes.
It's the same guy who shot Darkest Hour and who shot Half-Blood Prince, Del Bono, and he loves that. He loves you say the dominant color is kind of green, kind of gray.
Yeah, like like maybe neutral and on the gray side of things. Yeah, for sure. I would say it's probably also this was shot on film, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And so it's probably an effect of the film stock that he used. To get that. I think digital films, you think of something similar or how it's shot similar is like, I would say like The Social Network, in those like dark and kind of dreary, bar sequences in the beginning. And
there's a little of the Fincher thing. Yeah.
But that movie has much more of the sort of like the warm greens, the warm yellows, the sort of, it almost feels like a little bit more contrasty than this film does. And in this film, it's very soft. It's very like it's almost eerie and dreamlike. And I think that has to do with the fact that it's shot on film. But
yeah, I feel like he's lost something a little bit, Del Bono, with the digital, like Buster Scruggs. I don't know. It's a good movie. It just does not look great, though. It just does not look the same. And hopefully the new one, because he's also shooting Macbeth, but it's like black and white, so maybe it will be like a little more effective shooting digitally. But I don't know. To me, you can't beat. Well, I'm curious, like, if Darkest Hour is shot on film too? Because that's like,
I think Darkest Hour is digital.
Is it really? Darkest Hour does look pretty good.
It looks beautiful. It looks beautiful.
We all know we are big fans of Darkest Hour over here.
Yeah, it was shot on like a
codex. Yeah.
Yeah, Airy Raw.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Darkest Hour does almost get the like film sheen pretty well. That's pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think Darkest Hour, part of the reason too is because of the lighting is just so beautiful. It's so effectively done, but
it's much more theatrical. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. But so to go back to sort of, I guess I don't want to say complaints about the movie, but the thing that keeps me away from enjoying it or liking it is, like I said, I just feel like such a disdain for the main character that I'm rooting against him, and I don't feel like that's necessarily their intention. I understand what you mean, that like they're trying to be sympathetic towards him, but it's almost like he's too much of a piece of shit.
But I don't know. I mean, I think when I say it's sympathetic, like I think that's part of it, but I don't think they're making the movie like oh, pour one out for the dreamers of the world. Like it's not like a movie that's just begging to be sympathetic. I mean, what I would ask you, not to make you like the Isaac of this episode, but like why does a character have to be likable? Like why do you have to sympathize with someone?
No. It's not that he's unlikable, because I enjoy plenty of unlikable characters in films.
Right.
It's just like I said, it activates that that elephant in my brain that says, do you know the elephant in the rider metaphor?
Elephant in the rider?
Yeah, it's a guy named Jonathan Haidt. He has this idea about when you say when you talk about your brain, you talk about like what things your brain is activated by, it's like you have an elephant and the elephant wants to point one way. And that's like your first reaction when it's like your gut intuition, basically.
Right.
It's like your first reaction when you say, when you respond to a stimulus. And then you have your writer, and that's the thing that you think is controlling things, but really it's the elephant. Your writer can kind of control.
Oh, I see. Like a guy, the writer, like a guy riding on top of an elephant.
Yes.
Who's trying to control the elephant, but the elephant. Like if my writer is like saying, "Oh, I want to watch, the films of Yasujiro Ozu," but my elephant's like, "Let's watch another heist film." Like that's sort of what's going on.
Exactly. So for me, my elephant is so strongly in the opposite direction in this case, and it's just because when I see someone like this, when I see a character like this, or even just, I think it's a more person thing. Like it's more of just like a personal interaction thing. When I see someone like this, I have a flip that switches in a switch that flips in my brain that says, I'm actively wanting you to fail. It's basically what it is.
Well, yeah, and I think and
I can't my writer can't pull itself to get on board with the movie because I just don't care. Like at that point I've stopped. Like, by the like you said, by the point where they're on the park bench and they're having that conversation, that's kind of what I'm like. Nah, he's just a piece of shit.
So that's where you watch it. You go, oh yeah.
They're all terrible,
Yeah.
When he asks Justin Timberlake for money to get his wife's abortion, I wanted to
He's like, I have to tell Gene. He's like, oh, forget it. I asked.
There's nothing that you can do to get me on board with that character again. It just is not. It's not going to happen. Like there's no way.
But it's like, that's true. Like I'm not watching it and going like, no, he has a good heart. Like, no, he doesn't. but I'm watching that scene and like being like, that's hilarious. And it's so true. And just like it, I don't know if I like know guys like that, but it's like, you can see that that's like such a real thing. Like there are guys like that, but you can believe something like that. I mean,
but he's just pathetic. I mean, that's the thing. Like,
yeah. No, look, my mom had the same reaction when she watched the movie. Like she watched like 20 or 30 minutes of it, and then I think it was the scene where he brings back the wrong cat, and my mom said, "I'm gonna go take a shower." She just like was like, "Forget this. I don't care about this guy," because you're like, yeah, of course you are not. You're not rooting for him, but at the same time, like his story is so like tragic and humiliating, and also just scene to scene, the movie is just so well crafted. There's so much just like great crafted just in terms of the writing, staging, filming, editing of the individual scenes, that it's not, to me, it's not a problem. In fact it makes the movie almost like unique. There are very few movies that dare to have a character who's that unlikable. Yeah. And that's like, I don't know what I just don't understand is like, why is that a bad thing? What? Because I don't think you have to watch a movie. You don't have to watch it and be in line. You can just watch it and go, oh, that's interesting. Just watch it and just say, oh, just as a study of human behavior, which I don't know if I'm watching it that anthropologically. Like I'm watching it and especially watching it like the third time last night, I'm seeing things where you're going like, wow, they're putting in little details that are very telling about like the history of these characters. It's all very subtle, but things like, I was winding back that scene, the scene where before he asked Timberlake for the money, where they're sitting and listening to the army guy singing,
Mm-hmm.
And like he sort of like looks, there's like this eye contact between them and there's this history between them. But I think it's like after you've seen yeah, it's after the scene in the park where they're like screaming at each other. So you're like, these people, like, you're trying to figure out this relationship, and like, to me, that's like part of what's so not like fun and like a watch George Clooney scale down a elevator shaft way, but fun in like I find it interesting to parse out these like relationships and sort of like reverse engineer who these people are and what's happened to them, because there is some kind of the connection between them is fascinating, and then the whole thing at the end is fascinating. I mean, that part, I mean, I'm not sure if it maybe is stretches my suspension of disbelief a little bit that like she would sleep with Max Casella to get him the gig, but on the other hand, like, I'm like, there's something interesting there, and he tells her he loves her like at the end of the movie, and you're like, what? Like, where did this? But those things are not they are not flaws. Like, it's not like it's not like messy writing or anything. You're just watching and going like, wow, this is such a fucked up relationship, and this whole thing of like what's going on between them and what past they must have had, and like also just the fact of like how badly he must have treated her for her to treat him that way. Like for her to just like react to him on site in such a mean-spirited way in front of a stranger. You're like, wow, this guy, I mean, he's like a piece of shit, but he must have like been like done like so much to just earn this kind of reaction. I don't know. It's things like that that makes this movie very compelling to me. I don't know. I guess not for you. Maybe that's not the case, but
no, not really. And I guess, I don't know. I find it to be exhausting more than anything. And it's not like it's. Watching it again, I've recognized that it is. I understand that it's a very good movie. I understand that it's well made and well written, and the performances are wonderful, and it looks beautiful, and all those things are true. It's just I can't get over the elephant part of my brain, and it's just there's something about it that turns me that activates my disgust sense, and turns me off to the movie, because it is like how people really like don't like horror movies, or like people really are like
that's an interesting comparison,
where people are like it's almost like the demonic element of things is what like turns them off, just on its face. People don't like The Exorcist because of demons and whatnot, and it's kind of like it activates the same part of my brain where it's like I just don't like I can't enjoy it. I can't find myself liking it or being open to it, because I think I just fundamentally dislike the vision of the world, and I think it's I think it not only is it it's not just that I think it's wrong, which I do think it's wrong, but it's that it feels so pompous about it in a lot of ways.
I don't know I don't understand what you think is pompous. With all due respect, I don't know what. Just because I mean, like, are you saying because explain what you mean by pompous rather than me? Because
it feels like someone climbing up the rope ladder, and then sneering as they pull it up behind them, saying, "Oh, it won't work out for you, but we got here." And I just find that to be distasteful. Personally.
Well, that would be distasteful, but I just don't think that the Coens are sneering at like the less successful people. Like I think if it was a movie about that, it would be like
I no, it's
more,
not.
it would be more comedic, and it would be more just like.
But they're laughing about it, because of the vision of the world that they have. They have this vision that everything's chaotic and random, and there's nothing that you could do to get anything, to get ahead. And we made it, but you probably won't. So that's all right, and
But I mean, like, they can't help that they just were six. I mean, like, I don't know why are they obligated to convey a more hopeful worldview just because they've had success. Like their success, just in the same way that like me being like having a roof over my head and having money doesn't make me any less like conscious of like the horrible suffering in the world. I don't know why are they not able to comment on those things, especially when they're commenting on it in a way that I think is intelligent and truthful and not. It's not condescending. It really isn't to me. I mean, maybe you think it is, but it's been a problem that I've had with several Coen brothers movies now. Is just it feels like they're out. Well, first of all, I mean, I don't take their outlook on the world very seriously, because part of the reason is because you can't actually, not that it's not that it's not untrue, or I'm not sure. We don't know about the randomness or the chaos of the world, of course, but you can't operate in the world based on those guidelines, and I don't think they do either. I don't think they take their vision of the world very seriously either. Otherwise, they wouldn't be very successful. I mean, you can't. Well, yeah. I mean, if they truly were like, believe nothing mattered, they just, well, I mean, you just kill yourself, I think, or you at least just hide under your covers all day. But on the other hand, I don't think they're, even in something like Serious Man, which is like one of the funniest movies ever, about just this guy like bumbling through life and being like, why is God doing this to me? And what did I do to deserve this? Basically. I don't think that's a movie that. It's not like they're looking at it down their nose. They think it's funny and they think it's absurd, but I think it's possible to laugh at something and be like, "Oh my God, this is terrible," and this is such a strange situation, so ridiculous. But to take it seriously, and the takeaway of that movie is not, I don't know. I think of like the end of like Life of Brian or something, where he's on the crucifix and they're singing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life." Like just some like, like, oh, whatever. It's just chaos. So whatever. But their movies are haunting and serious. The ending of No Country, the ending of Serious Man is like devastating. And the ending of this, well, the ending of Llewyn Davis, I don't know. I mean, I kind of maybe have issues with, not massive issues, but I don't think the ending is as like just satisfying, just on a like almost like a musical level, not musical, but like on a maybe rhythmic level, I guess, where it's it doesn't feel. It's not that it has to feel conclusive, but it doesn't. It just kind of is like, okay, that's the like. It just sort of trails off, I guess what's great about the ending is the Bob Dylan playing music. That's really great.
Which is the best. It might be the best part of the movie. I don't know.
Bob Dylan appearing at the end of the movie.
I like it a lot. I think it's.
It's great, and it's another kind of like moment, but still the ending is, I mean, I think that maybe I just sort of like, I'm not crazy about the circular nature of the ending, and I'm kind of just okay, like I'm not sure if it really makes sense. But on the other hand, you're like, okay, I get what you're saying. Maybe it's because it's kind of obvious, it's like, oh yeah, he's not gonna change. He's just gonna continue going in circles, being the same kind of asshole, never, changing himself in life, and but you know, not a big issue at that point in the movie. I mean, I'm totally.
It's possible that I'm reading their sort of intent wrong, and that's completely possible. Like, I think you could read this movie as if it's a comment on action when people believe that the universe is conspiring against them in some ways. You know, that he has this outlook that oh, nothing ever goes right for me and blah blah blah. But really, it's because of his own stupidity or his own lack of thought or lack of foresight. And that's why he's unsuccessful. But I'm almost tempted to believe that that's not actually the case. I don't know.
Why?
I think probably just based on the context of their other movies, that they have a certain amount of nihilism in a lot of their movies, and I don't know. So I'm not sure. But
I mean, to me, it's about that to some extent. I mean, his I mean, just the fact of him, like when he turns down royalties or whatever, or when he's or turning down just gigs that he thinks are kind of beneath him, that sort of thing. I mean, it's too cut and dry to say like that's just the reason for his failure. I mean, his failure is not just the conspiring of the universe or his inability. It's like all these different factors all happening all at once. And also just the fact that his art that he does, that he's great at, is depressing and is not the sort of thing that people are interested in, and that's not going to get popular. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm comfortable with the movie having all these different sort of factors going on. I don't think that's a problem. I can see why the movie would rankle you. I mean, I think the Coen brothers mentality is like fundamentally like, I don't know. I could imagine for a person. I mean, I don't want this to sound like disrespectful at all, because it's not. But like, to a person who believes in God, like that is a hard thing to reconcile with what the Coen brothers are espousing. I mean, would you say that is part of it?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a little bit. I think the nihilism is sort of one angle to that, but then also there's a sense of, and this is, you know, regardless of my own you know, religious feelings, I have the sense that in some ways, I get the feeling that they believe that you can't do anything to change your outcome, or you can't affect your own life, and I don't believe that fundamentally.
But what about something like, I mean, I don't know, maybe they've moved beyond this because this is now like 25 years ago, but like, what about something like Fargo though, where you know, you see that the people who are, you know, at their happiest are people who you know, live in this sort of simple way. Like, that movie does seem to have a sense of hope in the form of Marge and her husband and the way they see the world and the way they live their lives. I mean, to me, I don't know if, I'm not sure if I feel that they're their vision is entirely a world without any possibility of happiness. Because again, even in Llewyn Davis, which I think truly may be their bleakest film, like actually, there are like these little like moments of like, you know, compassion, like with, you know, these like even the sort of goofy, the Gorfines, for example, you know, the compassion they show, or just other people he meets, you know, along the way. Or just the fact that like you see like just the little like embers of humanity in Llewyn's character, and the way the way he cares about the cat, at least to some extent, or that sort of thing, where you're seeing this sort of like lying dormant within him, and also like the way his like emotions are. It's like his hostility is like this cover for like, it's like a protective shell around his vulnerability that still exists. Like he's not entirely calcified in just being a nasty person. Like there still exists some humanity and some feeling within him. I don't know. To me, the worldview the Coens are espousing in something like this is a lot more. I think maybe is more complex than you might be giving it credit for.
No, it's entirely possible, and that's what I mean by the elephant takes over when I watch this movie, and I think, like I said, it might be just a character flaw of mine in that I have no ability to be sympathetic to people who are like this, but also it's just. I do believe that you can change your outcome based on your decisions, and I think
right. That's almost more important than the God thing, actually, because you have a healthy dose of cynicism in your personality, but
100%.
But fundamentally, you are more of like, you know, you're like kind of like I was almost say like a bootstrap sort of person of like hey, you can get it done, you can do this, whatever.
In some ways, yes. Although I understand that's obviously the meme, and you know, but the fundamental reality behind that is that you can't act any other way, whether or not it's true, whether or not you're, you know, of course, sometimes you die of a brain aneurysm, and there's nothing that you can do about that. Sure, right. Of course that's true, and I understand that people have different, people have different barriers between them and success or whatever. I get that, but you can't in your life, in your personal, in the way that you act, there's nothing else that you can do other than believe that if I do certain things, and if I treat people a certain way, or if I act a certain way, that I'll be successful. There's no way that you can avoid doing that. If you do anything else, you're doomed to failure. So I fundamentally, I don't believe that that you can act any other way. I just don't see how you could.
Well, I mean, like putting aside just I don't know. I think we're probably actually more. I mean, like I'm. If someone was to listen to this episode not knowing us, you would think Cameron is like a sunny optimist, and I'm just like, put a hoodie on, doomer. But like, I mean, really, I think we probably exist pretty closely in a lot of ways. Yeah. I mean, actually, really, the biggest contrast is the faith and lack thereof, actually. But I think. I don't know. I still feel like more optimistic than a lot of people I read in some ways. But even just like putting that aside, I think a lot of people who like this movie are probably like types of people who like this sort of point of view and like this sort of story being told, this sort of like view of the world. But I mean, what I ask for is for someone like you. I mean, like we're able to watch movies that are, I mean, like the death of Stalin. That's like a horribly bleak. That is like a bleak movie, man. And at the same time, we're still able, I'm still able to appreciate something like, Spielberg's movie, because there's a lot of people who probably really like the Coen brothers who are like, get out of here with that like idealistic claptrap. Get out of here with that like overly hopeful sort of point of view.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, I'm kind of that way too, right? I don't really like Spielberg's more sentimental movies, personally.
I mean, oh God, well, that's a whole nother discussion to be had. That
sure.
We have to go on for another 4 hours, but I think. Well, I don't know. I think for you, I mean, like I just like why can't you appreciate something like Inside Llewyn Davis, where it's just, just because it's more bleak than your personal. I don't know. I don't even know if I view the Spielberg movies as idealistic, even though because I have like a reading of that's more complex too. But again,
the reason why is because I find the vision and the reason for this movie to be a little bit pointless in the case that this movie is correct, or that the worldview that I'm interpreting from this movie is correct. I just find the reason for this movie existing to be kind of pointless. If it's the case that the world is bleak and random and there's nothing you can do to control your outcome. Like I just don't find it to be very interesting as a subject or as a worldview. I don't know. It's just.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I can't convince you. I mean, I don't know. Like when you're watching, I mean, to just like hone into just like a specific level, like when you're watching, like say that scene, I don't know, like take the scene where they're in the diner with him and Carey Mulligan. Are you just watching? So when you're watching it, I'm watching it and going like, wow, look at this. This is interesting. What's going on between these people? Oh, wow. What a great performance. Oh, well, this is really, oh, that was great how she delivered that line. And so are you watching it just going like, I'd rather be anywhere else. I'd rather put a grenade in my mouth and pull the pin out. Like,
with some scenes, yes, maybe not that scene necessarily. With some scenes, yeah, I do kind of feel that like that disdain. But with other scenes, I feel like I get really drawn in to it, and I get really. Like I'm not trying to say that this movie has no value at all. Like it has a lot of sequences that I really do like, and that I feel connected to in a lot of ways. But as an overall package is kind of where I'm where I feel mixed about, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I mean, I don't know. There's no convincing you. I don't think. I mean, it's
not that I think it's bad. It's just that I have a personal kind of it just doesn't get me on board in the same way that something else might. And that's okay. It's just not for me, I guess.
No, I think in some ways it's like it's a good. The horror movie comparison is good, especially like when I watched horror movies when I didn't enjoy them as much. Now I kind of just enjoy them. But like, yeah, if 5 or 10 years ago, if I watched a horror movie, I'd be like recoiling just in like, oh God, this is disgusting. Oh, who would want to watch this?
Yeah.
I specifically remember the movie It Follows, where I watched it and I was like,
I love that movie.
I hate this. Like, I hate watching this. It's making me like so anxious. I just want to like leave. I wasn't even in the theater. I was just like, I just want to leave my computer, not watch this anymore. But I'm watching it and like, this is really well made. Like you can tell this guy is good, And so I think that's a good comparison for, that sounds like where you're at with this.
Yeah.
It's like, you're like,
100%.
high level, but just like, you just can't take it. And I don't know. I understand that. It is also just very weirdly like comfortable being almost boring, like almost like it's so mundane, especially that like long road trip. You're just like, oh my God.
It's a lot.
I mean, I enjoy it sort of the way I enjoy some other boring, I don't know. I think it's a good portrayal of boredom. It doesn't actually make me bored, I think Goodman is great and enjoyable, but it is a lot to take. But I think at the end, him going on that long journey when he finally arrives at the promoter or whatever the guy is, and that it's like it has this like almost like mythic like Odyssey sort of quality to it that's really powerful. And just the whole journey he goes on, it feels sort of like epic, even though it's so mundane and just so banal, and ultimately I don't know. Yeah, ultimately pointless for him, but for me, watching just the movie and watching, I think what I always just come back to is just like the power of the music. Like the music is so good in the movie, and so it's so beautiful every time he sings. You're just like, oh my God, it's so wonderful. And then that existing within such an ugly world is, I think, is the biggest part of what I like so much about the movie, and why it's so resonant and sort of haunting. And it's like, and I think that to me is what prevents it from being too nihilistic. Is like the world is capable of producing such beauty, and the world is capable of human beings are capable of this sort of talent, but it's like so much around it is so horrible. I don't know. I think there's a lot of truth to that. But I understand. I'm not going to drag you through the mud for not enjoying like the bleakest film I've ever seen. So, that's okay. But yeah, it's great to revisit. I'm glad I got on board. There are now like only like maybe one or two Coen Brothers movies I don't like. These guys have a pretty amazing track record. We need to watch some of their other like I really want to know what you think of like Serious Man or stuff like that, because how you reconcile the nihilistic worldview with the high, because Mick has also had the same experience. Mick has been giving them very consistently good reviews, but saying like this worldview, this like thing that they're pushing is not going anywhere. Like he basically, and I think in Buster Scruggs especially, he was like they're stuck ideologically in their movies, and they're not, they're saying sort of the same thing over and over, and it, they're so talented they can get away with it because it's just like the craftsmanship is enough, but I don't know, I think that's a fair. Yeah.
I think that's a fair point. Also, is to say that there's no, as much as you want to look into this kind of worldview, there's no further depth that you can go. And yeah, and so I think that's probably fair. It's like,
I mean, to be clear, I don't agree. Like, I don't really agree. I mean, I wasn't as crazy about Buster Scruggs as some of the other stuff, but I think it is perfectly valid, and I enjoy the nihilistic worldview because it's, to me, it's hilarious.
But like how much more can you look into that abyss? Like how much deeper can it? It's like looking into the, like the phantom black or whatever, the like blackest thing on earth that reflects no light. It's like there's no detail in looking into something like that. It's just that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't want them to get stuck in that place, and I think it's good that Joel is going and kind of pivoting to Shakespeare and doing something a little bit different with his next movie. I think that's kind of a good place to go, because it could get a little bit tiresome Even though, I mean, I enjoyed Hail Caesar a lot. I don't know.
To be fair, though, Macbeth is probably one of Shakespeare's most nihilistic movies, or most nihilistic plays.
It's true.
So
It's true.
not that there's anything wrong with that either. But I like Macbeth, but it's pretty. I guess, I mean, Shakespeare is interesting because you could read him in a way that is a little bit nihilistic, but I think he has like fundamental. He's tapped into something that's fundamentally true in a lot of ways, and I think Macbeth is a good example of that, where one of the readings that you can take from it is there's this it is the more nihilistic reading, I guess, and then the other way that you could take it is sort of the the thoughts about power and all those things. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I'm excited for him to do it, but I think it'll be interesting to see which road he goes. I would say I have a guess on where he's going to go. But.
Oh yeah, I mean, of course it's going to be. I think he's also talked about it kind of as like a just like a pure thriller too, and as it's shot in this like German expressionist way. It sounds fascinating, and I'm obviously one of the most anticipated movies of the year for sure. Though I have to say, everything you just said about Shakespeare, I could say about Joel and Ethan Coen without question. Everything about like the nihilism, the deeper truth, the observation, all these things are applied.
Well, I would say
boys.
Most of Shakespeare is not that nihilistic, but
sure. But I would put, as screenwriters, Joel and Ethan Coen, William Shakespeare, they're in the same league for me. They're absolute legend. I mean, I'm just like, I don't know. This year has just been the year of me completely moving those guys up a lot on my like favorite directors, because I've just been so enjoying going back and watching all these movies. But in any case, I don't want to keep it for too long, Cameron. I think we've said our piece about the movie.
Yeah, it was a good discussion.
Yeah, I know. It's an interesting one to get into. Not very timely, but worth discussing. But anyway, let's. I won't keep you for a minute longer, Cameron. It's good to talk to you. Hopefully,
it was good
see you in
talking to you
person.
too.
Well,
all right, sounds good.
Take care, man. I'll see you soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right. Later.
If I had wings like Noah's dove, I'd fly the river to the one I love. Oh, fare thee well, my honey.